there was a xenomorph in your chest.
I haven't seen episode 3 yet, by the way.
I'm not going to spoil anything, I promise you.
Okay.
I have seen it. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Would you A, kill yourself immediately, or B, wait to the last possible moment and then heroically leap to your death while cradling your little alien baby?
Gotta do the second one. I'd be curious to see, like, what is this going to feel like?
Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast confronting Mike Flanagan on the top of the world. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, I finally let him out of his little box after all those years. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going, Matt?
Great party.
Oh, but poor room 217. She's dead. Like dead.
She's gone.
What happened to her?
I don't know. I feel bad. I miss her.
Really? This is an important part of your life.
Yeah.
Mrs. Macy, I think her name was. Miss Macy, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the spirit of a ghost locked into a mind box could turn into ash and be gone forever. But now I know.
I kind of love that because it's the last thing you expect. You're like, she's, and then you're like, well, where did she go? And then you're like, what does that question even mean?
Where did she? She didn't exist in the first place. She existed via Danny. So right. I think it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Anyway, this week on the show, we are reaching the end of Stephen King's Dr. Sleep as we read chapters 18 all the way through the epilogue to the end of the novel. Dan and Billy head west to confront Rose the Hat and the remains of the True Knot, and with the help of Abra, Momo's final gift, and a ghost push from dear old dad, the good guys win. And the novel closes on Dan and Abra doing, pretty good, actually, all things considered. Matt, what'd you think? What'd you think of the end of Dr. Sleep?
Yeah, I see this as a big win. This is a very fun and exciting climax. I thought everything came together nicely. I liked how a lot of the stuff was executed. Obviously, I think kind of like we talked about last week, there are so many places where it diverges even more strongly from the movie. But this week, I didn't have that experience of constantly being like, oh, the movie did this better. It was more just like, oh, that's different, but I like this too. That I feel like the things that were, the Chekhov's guns that were set up earlier in the story all got satisfyingly pulled off, and really enjoyed this a lot. I as critical as we might have been last week, I thought that the landing was really stuck here.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I really enjoyed my time with these last 70 pages of this book. I thought that King wrapped it up in a pretty satisfying way. I found myself emotionally affected by all the moments that the book really wanted you to be emotionally affected. I think the epilogue really affected me. As we'll get into Dan's kind of final wave to his father, that hit me right in the feels. I think all that worked. We talked last week about perhaps the ending of the book will redeem all the things I complained about last week that it did. And I don't think that quite happened. I still do not love, even after reading these final 70 pages, the decision to make Abra related to Dan and Jack. I still don't love it. I think the best thing I can say about it at this point, having finished the book and reminded myself of the ending, is it matters. It's in my estimation so inconsequential to what the book is ultimately saying and doing that I can just kind of pretend it doesn't exist and enjoy the book for what it is. And that's, I think, what I ended up doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think my biggest complaint about this, this week's reading being the ending of the book is just like certain of the themes don't really quite gel for me. And perhaps we'll have a great conversation here, and maybe in the course of this conversation, you'll help me put things together in a way where it does gel. But I'm just honestly reporting that, kind of stepping away from the book, I'm just like, okay, I don't see how these things connect, and more importantly, I didn't feel them connecting.
Yeah.
But maybe I missed something. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to that conversation. I think there are some connections there, but I don't think they all quite work that well. Again, I think it's a testament to the quality of the writing and the just the plot itself that I found it so captivating, despite just not being clear. Yes, this is what King was saying and doing. Some of that I think gets a little muddled by so much of the some kind of the clunkiness of some of the story elements, but I ultimately really enjoyed it. So there you go, folks. You cannot be mad at me anymore because I still hate the Abra thing, but I enjoyed the end of this book. I did.
Yep, that's right. Can't be mad at him.
Yeah, I mean, there's still gonna be so mad. Speaking of which, before we get into the chapters proper, I did want to circle back around to something that for y'all listening at home will be 2 weeks ago. But for Matt and I is just a couple days ago. We got what I can only describe as a preponderance of messages and emails and comments on our episode 2 weeks ago about our kind of joking around about the Steam being a virus transferable thing that exists in the story. We got so many people, Matt, who basically said, the Steam doesn't have to be transferring the measles at all. People are like rubbing their hands all over the person who has the measles and like
in his blood,
licking his blood. And like, okay, here's the thing, folks. That's true. However, let me offer some counter evidence. One, the book says it's the Steam that the measles are transferred through. That's my big piece of evidence. It's just what the book says.
Okay.
2, I believe the measles virus in their bodies lies dormant for a decade before it comes out. Now, I did look this up, Matt. This is how dedicated I am to you folks, and proving myself right. But I did look up. It is possible for, similar to like chickenpox, like these viruses can once have they infected a host and been cleared by their immune system, pieces of that virus can lie dormant in a person's body for years, up to I think 10 or 12 years, it said. So it's certainly possible that the measles virus just lay dormant in the true for 10 years. But normally it's like that's an after infection effect. Like you get the virus, you show symptoms to the virus, and if you survive the virus, there's pieces of it that like delete. Measles does this kind of weird like immune system deletion thing where it makes the body forget how to fight it, which is mean. It's a mean thing for it to do. But ultimately, I think the reason for the long gestation period was because it was like a magically transferred virus. And the final piece of evidence I have, and the thing that like I wanted to respond to people when they were sending me this message, but I was like, I don't know if these people have read the book or not, and I don't want to spoil the book. But the final piece of evidence I have is in the last chapter of the book, Dan gives cancer to people via Steam. So like, it's just, I think the measles thing was a setup for how that final moment at the end of the book lands, where he gives them all Steam cancer. So like, in conclusion, the measles it was just the Steam.
Yeah.
It was just the Steam.
I mean, that's the literal Chekhov's gun here, is we set up the idea of a very mundane virus being carried in the Steam, and then we use Steam as a vector to carry cancer, which, by the way, is not even a communicable disease in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's really just sort of the, essence of cancer and the essence of measles, you could say. But again, that was the impetus for our discussion question, is how fun it is that King just kind of blurs these lines together.
Yeah, and people, I guess, just rejected the concept of the question out of hand. But I think I will say, like, in actual answer to like yes, they were rubbing blood all over themselves and licking blood and touching a person who has measles. My interpretation of this is the true are not human. They are not human. They have become something else. And the idea that we don't catch their diseases is a similar thing to the fact that some viruses are not transferable from species to species, right? Like I think measles in particular is not a virus that like we can give to our dogs, for example. I don't know if that's 100% true. I think that's true.
I don't know.
And so like, I think just the idea that like one of the reasons why the true was not catching our sickness is because they do not get our illnesses via like viral transfer, like other humans would. So I think that the fact that they are now getting those kind of illnesses through the steam indicates some change in them, and maybe some change in the steam, and some, again, what we talked about before, some change in the magic of the world, and in how this stuff works is shifting and changing. And so I think I appreciate everyone's comments, but I think it was just the steam, y'all. I think they just got the measles through the steam. I think that's what it was.
Yeah. Again, viewed in light of the whole story.
Yeah.
It just seems to be pretty clear.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, let's move on to this week, in which we see steam cancer. But first, we have chapter 18, Going West. And I just to officially say it, Matt, we once again have the force of good moving out west to confront a great evil. They're not going to Vegas this time. This isn't the Stand. And they're not going to Boulder, Colorado either, Matt. But they're going near Boulder. Sidewinder is supposed to be relatively near there. I put the overlook roughly in my brain about where the Stanley is and where Estes Park is. So I think Boulder, and I was like, Estes Park is pretty close to that. I don't know if it's actually supposed to be that close, but
all that stuff is all kind of vaguely in the same part of the state. So sure. Yeah. Dan says, I will take the Abra to Sidewinder, but I do not know the way.
And so his friend, Samwise Billy Gamgee. Look, it didn't work, but he takes Billy along with him. But before all that happens, Matt, before he begins to travel west, Abra and her family have to be reunited. And I really wanted to talk about this moment in particular because this really stood out to me. I'll read this. Lucy gave a cry that was not quite a scream. She had her seatbelt unbuckled and her door open before John could bring his Suburban to a complete stop. 5 seconds later, she had her daughter in her arms and was kissing the top of her head. The best she could do, with Abra's face crushed between her breasts. Now the sun spotlighted them both. Mother and child reunion, Dan thought. The smile that brought felt strange on his face. It had been a long time between smiles. I just like... There's a lot of moments here in this beginning of chapter talking about the mother-child relationships, maybe even specifically like the mother-daughter relationship. Like there's this other moment here where Abra is, they're kind of going through the plan. And of course, Abra is not going to go west physically. She's going to stay where she's at, but she is going to come with Danny mentally west. And her parents are first resistant to the idea, but then Abra says basically, besides, you and Dad can't really stop me. You can't lock me in my room, or you can lock me in my room, but you can't lock up my head. And then Lucy gave her the death stare, the one mothers save especially for their rebellious young daughters. It had always worked with Abra, even when she was in one of her furies, but it didn't this time. She looked back at her mother calmly, and with the sadness that made Lucy's heart feel cold. So like, I brought both of these sections out and I wanted to talk to you about this, Matt, because I think there's a lot of specific mother-child stuff going on here. And I thought multiple ways with this, which is one, how this relates to Danny's relationship with his mother, which is not something Dan talks about that often in this book, right? I think understandably the focus is on his father and his relationship with his father and the complicated nature of that. So we don't get a lot of focus on his mom, but also like this is not a thing that I think King actually writes about very often. You know, I think there's a lot of stuff in King's story of a son's complicated relationship with their mother, or much more often a son's complicated relationship with their father. But there's much less of mother-daughter relationship stuff, which I think is ironic given his first novel, Carrie, was like that exact thing. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what King is doing here, shining a spotlight on perhaps this relationship in particular.
Yeah, just a thought I had for a second was the only other example I can think of is the Franny stuff in The Stand, which was in fact like deleted from the book. But
yeah.
I mean, I love this stuff. It's interesting. We do spend a lot of time on Abra and her relationship with both of her parents and Conchetta. Just overall, just if you step back from the whole book and you look at our discussions week to week and where we spend our time, a lot of it is this family dynamic, this family relationship. And yeah, you're right. A lot of it is her relationship with her with her mom, and the evolving tensions and shifts in that relationship as a child goes from the child in need of protection, the little baby in need of protection, to a more mature, not quite adult, but maturing
Yeah.
version of the child who is taking responsibility for some of their own things, and in some ways, as we will see, maybe even being the one to protect the parent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like this, especially when compared back to Dan, because again, Dan's relationship with his mother is not something he really spends too much time thinking on. Like, we know that she died relatively young of cancer, um, but that's really all we know. We know he loved her, obviously, but it definitely seems like the events in the Overlook really messed her up, both physically, of course, and really mentally, to a place where I don't know if he ever really recovered. She ever really recovered from what happened, and how much like again, I want to be careful here. I don't want to say like she was a bad mother, because I don't. There's not enough information to say that. It just feels like when Dan thinks about growing up, she's very absent, or just kind of in the periphery of all those events. Like when he starts drinking, all those moments, like there's we learn that Dan started drinking because The Shining got really, really bad when he was a teenager. We don't know if he ever talked to his mom about this. I think there's like lip service to that. He's like, "Did your mom know you were drinking?" And he was like, "Well, I think maybe she did in retrospect, but we never really talked about it." And it just like, it seems like there is not there like this relationship with his mother was kind of forever damaged. And so I think part of the smiling he does and the mother and child reunion thing he does is he sees this mother daughter relationship, this mother child relationship that is still intact, that is still very, very strong and good. And he appreciates that so much, knowing that at some point he kind of lost that.
Yeah. I love that. I wasn't thinking that direction, honestly. I wasn't thinking about him and his mother, but I think yeah, I 100% agree. The importance of the parent-child bond is being paralleled between Danny and his mom versus Abra and her mom. What I was thinking actually was the other kind of uh, uh, circular parallel of her mom and Conchetta, where you have
Sure.
a much older woman and her. I know it's not her daughter, but she effectively raised Abra's mom as her daughter,
Yeah.
and they're in a they're at the opposite end of that relationship where Conchetta is dying, and Abra's mom is having to deal with that grief, and she is in fact having to be the one to protect. Sometimes parents needed to be protected is this sentence
Yeah.
that Dan thinks about, and he's thinking about the fact that Abra is having to protect her mom, but literally her mom is also having to protect her surrogate mom, who is going into hospice and has just had this horrible series of falls where she's been horribly injured, and it's just very literal in that case.
Yeah. No, I love that, this kind of transition that we all go through with our parents, that you go from this is your protector, this is the main source of protection and comfort in your life, to as you grow older, your relationship with that person is more complicated, and sometimes those people need protecting as well. And that is what Abra has had to do for years. I mean, that is what something like The Shining creates in Abra, this responsibility to do that, of this need to protect them from this greater world that she has access to. And indeed, we'll see throughout the course of these chapters that she's giving the commands, she's telling them how the stuff's going to work, and just like that is a shift for parents that is very difficult. I kind of love Lucy's attempt at a death stare here, that just, yeah, this 5 years ago I give this look and my daughter does whatever I say, and then suddenly now she's almost 13 and it doesn't work anymore. And that, shine or no shine, that's just a thing that happens to all parents, right? And that's a lot of this book is the kind of this, as you said, this transition for Abra. This I mean, I don't want to say a loss of innocence, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like when can we say Abra lost her innocence? She's been so aware and so plugged into so many bad things and so many emotional things since birth, essentially, since like 9/11 happened when she was a baby. So like maybe she was just like a child that never had any innocence.
Yeah. I think it's more just the renegotiation of the relationship with the parents,
Yeah.
where, or maybe their acknowledgement of her lack of innocence is just as important, right? Because I agree with you. Like the thing they don't realize about her, that sort of their disconnect, the reason there is this distance between her and them, is they don't understand or accept her nature, and part of her nature is that she is a much darker creature than they like to imagine. She's keeping secrets from them. She's aware of all these horrible things. She has all these struggles that they don't know about, kind of because they don't want to know about, kind of because they've decided to look the other way and convince themselves she doesn't have this power anymore. And part of the story is simply them accepting her. And that we talked before about this possibly being a metaphor for other things, but yeah, it is just literally them looking with clear eyes at what she is and who she is and accepting it.
Yeah. I like that. All right, so Abra insists that Dan let Billy come with her because she feels something, and the two of them hop into the car and go. Dan spends the journey mostly sleeping because, of course, of the cancer rotting in his gut. Matt, let's talk about this. Actually, you obviously guessed this correctly right away last week, and were, of course, absolutely correct. But I think this is interesting because, like, obviously King doesn't like come right out and say, hey, he ingested her final breath, and in that final breath of red steam, it included the cancer that was rotting away at her, and now he's got that in him, and now he has cancer. He has cancer right currently because he has the steam inside him, and it's eating away at his gut. He doesn't say that until the moment that the breath is breathed out, but he doesn't exactly hide it either, right? Like, he just kind of comes right out and says it without saying it. I think it is no surprise to me that you caught on this immediately. And even if you hadn't caught on it at the moment you did last week, I think you would have clued into what's happening here well before that final moment. Which is it's just an interesting choice for him to do it this way.
Yeah, I honestly really liked it because,
sure,
I feel from my perspective last week, he did everything except literally tell us exactly what Conchetta gave him during her death scene, because it was pretty clear that she gave him something as she was dying. And it's like, okay, well, this has been set up, as we talked about a bit ago. And I think it works well because, King isn't big on twists that rely on hiding information from the audience. And again, he's not hiding information from the audience. He's just not giving us the full details, which I think is fun because it means we kind of know what's going on, but we don't actually know exactly what to expect. And that leaves us with both the satisfaction of being right, being like, I knew it. I knew that he had the, but also the surprise of like, how exactly is that going to manifest? Like, I will say, I did, correctly predict that he had her cancer in his body, but I didn't predict like that he had her spirit in his body, right? And that maybe I should have gone so far as to say, because when he exhales her, this is obviously going to be much later, but we see her ghostly form for a second, and in that moment I was like, oh yeah, I mean that makes sense too, because like, what is your steam other than your essence? But I don't like in my mental image, that's not what I was thinking was going to happen. So
sure,
was surprised, but also kind of satisfied.
Yeah. No, I really like it too. Do you think? So this is taking something magical and metaphysical and attempting to make it literal. Do you think like he literally has tumors in his gut? Like if someone were to give him a scan right now, they would see cancerous tumors in his gut? Or is this more like you have cancer and it's manifesting in the way that cancer would manifest, but it's like magical?
Yeah, it's. I think it's steam cancer. I don't think it's literal cancer. I think the rules are fuzzy here.
Yeah. It's death. I think later in the book, Abra describes it as like, what is inside of you. It doesn't feel like a ghosty person. It's a monster. And it's like, because it is the essence of cancer, almost like it is the essence of what this thing is, which is just death. And that's why when he breathes it out on the rest of them, it's not like they all just get cancer and it's like, oh no, we've all got cancer now. They just fucking die right away.
Right. I felt like part of that was because Concetto was kind of there, like using it against them too,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think you're
also
right.
satisfying.
I do like that Abra can herself sense something is wrong, and this is part of the king is really laying it on thick here. Like it's not like he's hiding that this is going on. He's as you said, he's telling us that there's something here. He just hasn't told us the full scope of what it is. And I like the relation is like this thing. We see that the cancer has been kind of locked in one of his lock boxes, and she sees those things and is like, oh yeah, there's two others in there. Probably shouldn't mess with those though. It's like good thinking, Abra. That's
Yeah.
really good. Good job.
That's funny. Yeah.
So Abra calls Rose again, setting up the rules for that Monday's confrontation. It's really hilarious, Matt, to read this scene in retrospect, realizing what Rose only realizes too late, that Abra has set the terms for this entire thing. It's like, yeah, you be up there on the platform alone, and I don't want anyone else around. I want them all in one place over there, all of them in that one building over there, clumped together, please, all of them, just right over there.
Yeah.
And it's just so obvious in retrospect. But you know, I think, I don't know, maybe I was just like, the first time I read it, the first time she set the terms with Rose, I wasn't thinking about it in that way quite yet. And I was like, oh wow, yeah, you've let her set this whole thing, and it's again Rose's overconfidence that is her undoing here.
Yeah, I think I agree that it wasn't, Abra pulled it off well enough that it wasn't obvious to me why she wanted them all in the building, other than to just have them far away from Rose so that they could guarantee a one-on-one.
Yeah.
But I do think this week really hammers in how much Rose is meant to, as a character, how much she highlights, this is what happens when you don't get a handle on your anger and your addiction.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, one thing I wanted to kind of play with for a moment, and I'll phrase this as a question. Do you think that King, he is directly connecting anger and addiction as being intertwined, or two heads of the same problem, or something like that?
That's an interesting thought. Because obviously, like in The Shining, it was kind of Jack's two-headed dragon. But as we talked about in previous weeks, those things made each other worse, but they weren't the source of each other, right? Like Jack was a person with anger problems independent of his drinking, which we see is also true for Dan and also true for Abra. And so, yeah, I think I do wonder if, like, I don't like, I'm not obviously not an expert of like addiction and alcoholism. So I wonder how often anger issues come part and parcel with that kind of addiction and that kind of disease. Or if it's just literally like, these are the things that King was thinking about at the time. I mean, like, honestly, without psychoanalyzing the guy too much, maybe he himself has both anger issues and his alcohol issues.
Yeah.
And so these were the things he wanted to focus on. So,
yeah,
I mean, I do think it is very apt that anger becomes a very specific thing here, both reflected in Dan and Abra, but to your point, like Rose as well. Rose lets her anger get the better of her.
Right. That's exactly what's happening here, the ego and the anger and everything. So the way I was thinking about this was like, well, emotional dysregulation is maybe the underlying thing, and that can happen because of trauma. It can happen because of chemical imbalance. Who knows why? Who knows why a person can have difficulty regulating their emotions, and then they self-medicate with, doesn't have to be alcohol. People self-medicate with all kinds of things.
Yeah.
To get a feeling of control over their emotional dysfunction. And very often, of course, that can be maladaptive and even literally backfire. But maybe, the doing of the drug is so pleasant and brings with it so many good brain chemicals that now, maybe you're just as this dysregulated as ever, but now you don't really feel so bad about it because you're drunk. So to me, that's the way the things connect, is like the alcohol is being used as a, extremely ineffective treatment for the anger. And then it, like you said, it actually just makes things worse. It makes your life worse. And then now you're stuck in a place that you didn't even want to be, and now you're even angry, or now you need more alcohol to treat it. I bring it up in this context because so everything I just said applies to, you know, Dan and his alcoholism and Jack and his alcoholism. I was trying to see if I could apply it to Rose and her steamaholism, and I don't know if I can, because like the way they use the steam really just, a lot of it seems to be utilitarian, where it's just like we're just trying to extend our lives, but then they also do get super high off of it and it makes them stronger. So I think there's something there. I just was trying to like bring it together, you know?
Yeah, I mean, she's also like hopped up on steam like this entire climax. Like she takes a shit ton of it. She basically empties the canister to give herself as much power as possible. So yeah, she's high as fuck. And I think that is, I mean, like I think this is one of these things that we talked about in the intro maybe don't come together quite perfectly, but I do think there's like shades of what King is saying about addiction in Rose. Obviously, like we talked about this from the very beginning, like yeah, the idea that she's kind of blinded by both her anger and her hatred and her just like need for Abra's drug is again and again and again her undoing. And that she's like, it is like a junkie or like an alcoholic, like they're going to do whatever they need to do to get what they need to get, their family be damned. Like her, like she basically, in the process of chasing this, Rose herself destroys her entire family. Or she either gets them killed outright, or she drives them away to the point where a bunch of them just leave. And so that, I mean, that does kind of perfectly measure an out of control alcoholic that is just going to rip everything apart in the chase for what they want. So I mean, it does fit. It does fit there.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. I agree that it does fit. I just kind of wanted it to click for me. Again, that I feel somewhat stupid saying this, and I've said it a few times where I'm like, I really wished Stephen King had spoon fed me just a little bit, because like you said, like these connections are there to be made, but I feel like I only make them later when we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Again, like literature doesn't need to explain itself to you, and I'm not saying that it does. I just maybe wish that it did a little bit more in this book.
One thought I had about this, and I don't actually know if this would be better or not, so I'm not saying like he should have done this. I'm not saying that, but the idea of like tying this final moment of Rose more closely to Dan's low point, like might have made this click a little bit better, because this is essentially like if we look at Rose the Hat as an addict, this is essentially her low point, right? This is her lowest point. This is the Danny wakes up next to Deanie and then takes her money and leaves moment. And I wonder if we had like more closely aligned that imagery between the two of them, it might have made this metaphor click in the way you're talking about a little bit better. Maybe not. I don't know, but that's one thing I do want to talk about when we do eventually circle around to Dan revealing the Deanie stuff, which by the way I loved, but it is definitely a choice to put that in the epilogue and not have that be a pivotal moment of Dan's arc. It is because it's in the epilogue, it is almost by definition outside the arc of the story. So I think we'll get to that more later, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that would have done it for you?
Something. I mean, I was kind of smiling as you said that, because I didn't think of that, but that would have been a fun idea to have it be a more obvious, you know, low point, or you know, more obviously parallel this to some moment when Dan or some other character had the opportunity to not double down on her mistakes, and then instead she does double down on her mistakes, right?
I'm stupid. Like King already did that.
Okay.
Like with Rose talking with Sari, who has a speech impediment and talks like a child.
Right.
That's the little boy in the Brave shirt.
Yeah. So I was thinking about Sari. I was thinking about this, but here's the thing: I couldn't make it work. I was like, oh yeah. So you're saying like Sari is like Deanie, no, what? But no, you're
No,
right.
Sari's like the kid. Sari's like the boy. Like
There's the boy reaching for the candy, I
yeah,
guess.
and like Dan, what the one thing Dan can say in his defense of himself is, hey, at least I moved the coke out of the way of the kid and I didn't let him get the canny. But Rose like locked Sari in a shed and said, when I give the word, go get the canny.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
like, or
No.
the Levenge.
The Levenge. So no, that's great, because I was gonna say this comment from when we talk about that scene, but definitely Sari is really played up to seem childish, and kind of innocent and pathetic in a way that makes you feel bad for her. And I thought that was just the part of the same pattern where the True Knot are kind of depicted as they see themselves as innocent victims so comprehensively that that it kind of starts to rub off on you, and you have to remind yourself, like, no, these are monsters. But no, I agree with you that the speech impediment in particular really lines that up. Again, it's great now that you've pointed it out to me. I just don't think that was at all obvious to me. And I'm still not 100% convinced that it was intentional, but I do love that as a connection. So that's great.
So just to wrap up this whole conversation in a bow, what I've just done is say, you know what I think Stephen King should have done? And then I said something that he did, whether intentional or not, that he actually just 100% did. So awesome. Great. We're good at our jobs.
Yeah. I'm imagining him, listening to this in some other world and being like, these fucking idiots.
Hey, we got there eventually. It just took us a couple minutes. Yeah.
It did.
All right. So as they make it to Colorado, Dan and Billy stop off at a kid's clothing store to buy, well, what turns out to be a mannequin. So the fun fact, Matt. So when they were talking, I remember we called out particular attention to this idea that Rose sent Crow or someone else to the sex store in Sidewinder to pick up something. And they really didn't say what it was. And that really doesn't ever like go anywhere in the story. Because I think the point of that scene is just like, hey, go buy me a sex toy so we can like really fuck.
I thought it was the porn that they used to distract Abra.
Oh, I guess maybe it was. Yeah. I guess that's what that was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. That's random, but that was that premeditated of a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. But in my head, what I was thinking of it was they buy some kind of blow up doll, because I remembered the mannequin being a thing. I just didn't remember who it was that was doing it. So I was like, oh, that's how this is going to pay off. So, okay. Anyway, point is they go buy a mannequin here. And I only call this out because the way they get the store to sell them the mannequin is, quote, in little losing hope stores of the turnpike, the C word went a long way. And so see what I mean about like not hiding it at all? Like he's just literally saying, I have cancer, and telling people I have cancer. And I guess you could, if you wanted to like look away a little bit, say like, oh, that's just like a story he made up to have sympathy. But come on.
Yeah. I think it's meant to be ambiguous enough where you could say like, oh yeah, he's laying it on thick, but then yes, he also just does. Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking of like 2025 access to porn, where it's just everywhere and you don't have to go into a store ever to buy it. So when I think of a sex store, I don't think of porn at all, because you don't have to do that. So my brain was not, that's when they went and bought the porn that they could show Abra to distract her. But no, I think that makes perfect sense.
I bet they still sell porn at sex stores regardless. But anyway,
probably. Yeah.
I'll have to go check.
On what? On a Blu-ray?
VHS.
All right. So they make it to Denver, and Abra swaps over to intentionally ping around. And then there's this quote I wanted to talk to you about. As he watched the Rockies draw closer, Dan thought of all the wandering years he had avoided them. That in turn made him think of some poem or other, one about how you could spend years running, but in the end, you always wound up facing yourself in a hotel room with a naked bulb hanging overhead and a revolver on the table. So this is one of those moments that I drew out specifically to crowdsource our audience on what poet is he talking about here, because I looked this up and could not find it out at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
This could be a made up poet, Or it could be literally, and this is what I think is most likely. Stephen King in the back of his head like remembers reading a poem about this one time, but he doesn't remember who it is. So which is why he says not the specific name of the poem, but like, some poem or other.
or maybe it's like a rock song, like,
Yeah, could be.
Like it sounds to me like a country song, honestly. That maybe he remembered the lyrics. I don't know. Again, I don't know what it is either. It's one of those things where it sounds vaguely familiar to me, but not in a way where I'm like, yeah, that's a poem. I'm just like, that's a image that seems familiar.
Yeah, I do love the image, the idea of you could spend your years running, but in the end you always wound up facing yourself in a hotel room with a naked bulb hanging overhead and a revolver on the table. Like, that's powerful imagery.
I love it.
Sure. So Dan stops off at the old apartment that he lived at with his mom and dad in the weeks before they moved up to the Overlook. And man, I guess some people I'm sure might like find this kind of nostalgia bait cheesy. It's like, oh, we're channeling The Shining in the most specific way possible here. But I really loved this moment. I really loved this moment of before he heads back to confront the Overlook. Dan takes one look at the place, maybe the last place he got to be a child, right? Like this is, we talked about the loss of innocence with Abra and the idea that maybe she never really had innocence. But I think with Dan, we could say that like, this is the last moment his family was truly happy.
Yeah.
And we get to he looks at it one more time before confronting the place that ripped his family apart ultimately.
Yeah. And remember, he was a cute little chubby 5-year-old. He wasn't he wasn't like 13.
Mm-hmm.
So probably had a little bit more innocence. I think, it's interesting. This book does a lot of reference to The Shining, right? And I was just contemplating, like, it never at any point bothers me or feels like a nostalgia bait or feels like it's indulgent. And I was thinking about, like, why is that? How did King pull it off? And I think it's actually very simple. I think it's just that, first of all, the book kind of earns its own gravitas just by being good. And then second, I think that to the extent that we have nostalgia, it's Dan's nostalgia. It's not our nostalgia for having read The Shining. It's Dan Torrance's nostalgia for his youth and him remembering these things and having complicated feelings about them.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point. It is not it is not the kind of memberberry stuff that you typically see in a lot of the nostalgia bait legacy sequel nonsense.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just earned fundamentally.
Yeah. All right. I did want to close. This is the end of the chapter, but I thought this was particularly great. There were a bunch of bars down that way. One was called the Broken Drum. Looks like urban renewal missed this side of town, so maybe it's still there. When my father and I walked past it, he'd always stop and look in the window, and I could feel how thirsty he was to go inside. So thirsty it made me thirsty. I drank a lot of years to quench that thirst, but it never really goes away. My dad knew that, even then. But you still loved him, I guess. I did. Still looking at that shambling rundown apartment house. Not much, but Dan couldn't help wondering how different their lives might have been if they had stayed there, if the Overlook had not ensnared them. He was good and bad, and I loved both sides of him. God help me. I guess I still do. I really love this. That even as we approach the climax of this book, like, this is not, again, like there was an opportunity for the reveal of Abra and this affair that Jack had doesn't really change Dan's understanding of his father in any kind of real way. And so like there's just like this consistent line to this book. Like this is, I think, a good point to say. This is not a book about Dan like wrestling with who his father was, right? I think he's got as much as he like wrestles at times with how he feels about his father. Like, that is not what the book is about. Like, there's a through line throughout the whole book that he still loves his dad, even if he recognizes the absurdity and complicated nature of that. He still loves his dad. This is more about Dan wrestling with himself and wrestling with the parts of him that are his father than it is wrestling him with who his father is, actually.
I think he has empathy for his father because he sees, all these things that I struggle with, my dad struggled with. And it's and it wasn't his fault any more than it is my fault. Although I think we as the reader say, yeah, Dan, but you take responsibility for it. And that's what makes you different from your dad. Whereas your dad lied to himself constantly and avoided taking responsibility for it. So Dan is, if anything, overly generous to Jack, but I think that's fine. That's how children are about their parents.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, that's kind of what Billy says. Is like, you loved him, of course you did, and he's like, yeah, and I still do. I still love him, and you always will, because that's parents, man.
Yep.
They could try to beat you over the head with a roque mallet, and you're still gonna love them.
Yep.
All right, chapter 19, Ghosty People. Is it a coincidence, Matt, that chapter 19 of the novel is like the kickoff of our climax? So, I mean, probably.
Probably, yeah. It's probably a coincidence.
All right, so we begin with Abra still back in New Hampshire, preparing to switch over to Dan, warning her family that they cannot come outside to help her. Another beat here of what we already talked about, that this is the parents having to let their kids go. Abra is the one in command here. She says, you need to go now. And her parents are forced to kind of listen to her. Everything is all set. Dan closes his eyes and thinks about the lock boxes Dick had him construct in his mind. 2 for the Overlook ghost, and a new one containing, as we learn out later, the spirit of Momo and her cancer. I really liked this wrinkle, though. Not that the lockbox thing had always worked. On several occasions, he had tried to make one for the drinking, but that effort had been an abject failure, perhaps because he had wanted it to be a failure. I just love that idea that that's what he tried. He tried doing that as well.
I love it when I don't know. I wish I had a handle for this, but it's like it's maybe an idea that occurs to the writer, and they're just like, this character definitely would have realistically tried to use the magic power for this particular thing, and so I should address why that didn't work. so that the reader doesn't sit there thinking, well, why didn't he just do this? And first of all, I think. Well, anyway, I agree that I like it. I like that this is an element in the story, and almost part of me feels like it would have been a bad idea to try to lock the drinking away, like to lock a piece of yourself away. It just sounds like a sort of risky, destructive thing to do, even if it's for something nominally good like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we reasoned at the beginning of the novel, we were like, oh, I don't know. Like, I understand that this like solves the problem, like the immediate problem of I'm being haunted by these spooky ghost people. But it does just seem like locking something in the back of your mind is not going to be like a good long-term solution for you, Dan. And of course, I think it is no accident that the book ends with him opening all those locks now. He's not keeping these people locked up in the back of his mind anymore. So yeah, I mean, locking up his alcoholism would be not solving the problem. It would be maybe doing like magically what Jack was trying to do with his just going cold turkey, not going to get any help, just gonna grin and bear it type thing.
Right. The dry drunk thing. Yeah.
Yep. Of course, Rose has plans of her own, Matt, and these plans involve taking poor Sari and locking her in a maintenance shed. I don't know. I'm not good with geography and visualizing things. I don't know if this is supposed to be that maintenance shed that we saw several times in The Shining. I don't remember if the maintenance shed also burned down. Part of me thinks it exploded at some point. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same maintenance shed. This is the maintenance shed, by the way, that as they were finally fleeing, that there was a moment where the hotel almost got Dick Halloran. It like almost took him over in like a last desperate attempt to stop them from running. I don't know if it's the same shed, but let's just say it is.
It is, for sure. 100%.
Okay. You're convinced? Yeah. Are you actually convinced, or are you just playing the game that I'm playing?
I completely forgot about the existence of a maintenance shed from The Shining, so I had no thought about this in my brain at all, but, geographically, does it make sense? I don't know. I honestly have a pretty poor sense of, like, the map of uh, this area and
Yeah.
where exactly this like railway that Rose is standing on is relative to like where the Overlook used to stand. I'm only now realizing this, by the way, now that you're asking me these questions. I'm like, I don't know I don't know how any of this is put together. So sure, I'll just buy that was the maintenance shed, though.
Yeah, I do have a very hard time visualizing what like the Bluebell campground and the roof of the world and all that stuff looks like in my head, actually. Like, I think the closest thing that helped me understand what roof of the world looks like is they describe it as a gallows when they see it. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I can kind of see that. But it's just like a big wooden platform where the hotel used to stand. Like, my brain doesn't do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, living in Colorado and driving in the mountains every now and then, you see these literal overlooks that are basically, you're on a winding mountain road, then you see a big area that they've flattened out so that people can pull off and look at the view. And very often there's like a wooden platform element to these things. Okay. And that was basically what I was imagining. But, where that's supposed to be relative to where the overlook was, that's where I get really
I think it's supposed to be like right on the site of the overlook. But where like this maintenance shed is compared to that, and where the maintenance shed and the roof of the world is compared to the like town, like the event room that the rest of the True are in, I don't know. Yeah. I think the shed is close to the roof of the world, because the plan is that when he's looking up at Rose, Sari's going to walk out and sneak up behind him. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't know why my brain just can't do this. And like, I can't even use the movie as a cheat code to help me visualize this, because obviously none of the movie looks like this whatsoever, because in the movie, the Overlook didn't burn down, because that's not what happened in Kubrick's version.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to talk about Sari for a minute here, but we kind of inadvertently already did that when I figured out what King was perhaps trying to do with this character. But she is this very childlike member of the True Knot, and Rose is just completely manipulating her to get what she wants out of her.
Yeah, right. The idea of her being sort of being like Rose's child, in the sense that she's someone Rose is responsible for, and yet she's using her as a weapon. I'm really loving that connection now, because I hadn't really made that. I mean, I thought about it before, just in the normal way that we've talked about how the True Knot all do seem to have this real affection for each other, but also it's a kind of limited. It's not really. They're not really a family, right? They care about their own survival above everything else. Certainly above the True Knot, and a lot of their loyalty to each other comes from the practicality of the fact that, hey, these are the people who helped me get steam.
But there's still definitely some genuine affection and love there. Like the book makes a point so many times to stop and mention this. I mean, hell, we're about to get to a moment where Dan kills them all, and yet the book stops and has a moment of genuine love there. So like it really wants to hammer this idea home. In a way that I think, we've talked about it multiple times throughout the course of reading this book, and it will never not be fascinating to me that like King clearly doesn't want us to just think of these people as horrific monsters. Like, he wants us to see that there is some sort of love and family there. And I think the point ultimately is exactly what you're saying, is like, in spite of the genuine love and affection, in spite of the genuine bond of family and cooperation and togetherness, these are people that will use each other, that will climb over each other to get the next hit, or to get what they need, or to survive. But I mean, it makes sense. This is a group of people that are doing one of the most incomprehensibly evil things in the world just to live longer. And they will, if they're willing to do that to ensure their survival, what aren't they willing to do?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, being capable of affection doesn't make you not a monster, is maybe one simple thing we're looking at here.
Jack Torrance in The Shining loved his son.
Yeah.
Right? He also tried to kill him.
Yeah.
And as we talked about many times throughout the course of that book, that was, of course, prodded and pushed by the hotel. But it was prodding and pushing stuff that was in him, that was part of him already.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the complicated nature of people. Yeah. Even vampire witch people.
Creature.
So one more thing on Sari is that we learned that her special, like, true knot power is dimness, that she can kind of just make herself almost invisible at times, which is just a really sad power because it just kind of fits her. You know, it's funny that this was a character that we never actually got introduced to with the true knot and only learned about her after, like, we learned that Andy died. Really, we only paid attention to her once Andy died, and I think that fits the idea of dimness. So the plan here is that she can hide in the shed, and even if they open the door to the shed, they won't be able to see her because nobody can see her because nobody notices her, which is just it's a really sad power to have.
Yeah. It's interesting how it sort of thematically mirrors her, personality, right?
Yep. All right, so Dan begins his walk not to the roof of the world where Rose is waiting, but to the campground. As he goes there, he sees the platform and Rose facing not his direction, but towards the parking lot where Billy's truck is down there waiting and where Abra is supposed to be coming from. The trap they've set starts to reveal itself. Dan calls Abra into his mind, into the room that he put, the wheel that they're going to turn to switch. And it's his old room at the Overlook, Matt. It's his old room in the living quarters, except for one change. He added a pair of French doors that look out onto the battle waiting for them ahead. He changed things. He had to, he says, and we get this line. She studied him, her eyes grave, because that was then and this is now. Because the past is gone, even though it defines the present. Okay, so this is one of those things where, like, I think this is supposed to be like a profound revelation moment. And I really scratched my head on this for a few minutes, and I was like, I'm not sure I understand what we're saying here. So let's just go over this again and see if we can maybe crack it. So the idea here is that he's created this kind of mind palace for himself that the wheel that connects their minds is going to be housed in, and that is created out of a place from his memory, a place from his childhood, his safe haven, if you will, in the Overlook, which was his room in the caretaker suite. But he can't make it exactly the same as that. He has to change it because the past, you can't live in the past, even if it affects the present. Okay, but what does that have to do with Matt, help me out here.
Yeah, it doesn't really gel for me. I want to bring something else into this, which is a horrible confession to make because I feel like maybe I used to get this, but maybe I lost the thread at some point. The confession is I'm not sure that I fully understand what it means to say that life is a wheel or Ka is a wheel. Like, and I mean, okay, so sometimes like Ka is a wheel is used to say like patterns repeat themselves. A person repeats their mistakes or things repeat themselves across generations. But this book takes it in a way that I find almost too literally, where it's like life was a wheel and its job was to come back to where it started. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it isn't. That's not what life is. That's not what anyone's life. Your life is a progression of things that are ever changing, and they never go back around. Nothing has ever gone in a circle for me ever.
No, they called him Doc again at the end, Matt, and that's the wheel. That he was Doc when he was a kid, and now he's Doc again as an adult.
Right. Okay, I get that. What I mean is, like, I don't see how this is meant to be like a deeply wise, observation about humanity, and I feel the same way about what he's saying about the past here. I think I'm just not getting it, and I think like that's part of the reason why the book isn't quite clicking for me. Is I'm just not getting what he's going for with this idea and the life is a wheel idea. I'm just like,
yeah, I mean, okay, so this is one of the things that I think we've kind of sort of talked about before, and maybe it's just raising its head again here, is this idea of what is Dan's arc over the course of this book? right? This is a man who, like, we talked about this at the very beginning. This is not a book about a man struggling with alcoholism, right? This is a book where we meet the character at his low point, then we see him get sober, and he stays sober throughout the entire book. There are one or two moments of temptation where he almost falls off the wagon, but he stays that way. He's consistent and he succeeds in it. And so, like, what is Dan's driving issue and conflict in this story, right? Is it struggling with sobriety? I mean, like, I don't want to diminish his struggle with sobriety, like, because I know that's a difficult struggle. I know there are I think there are a lot of people that read this book that they themselves are sober and struggle with it sometimes, and the scene specifically where Dan struggles with it spoke to them a lot. I get that. But, like, it's kind of weird that the central conflict of the book doesn't challenge Dan in that way, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, there's that, and there's this idea of the past and the present, and I think King is really trying to do this idea of, and I think that is part of the reason why, although I don't think it works, it is part of the reason why we make Abra a blood relative, because I think the King is trying to explore and understand this concept of nature versus nurture, this concept of does your past define you, who you are, like, who am I? Who is Dan Torrance? Is Dan Torrance a product of who his father was and a product of the thing that happened to him when he was 5 years old? Or is he something else? Or is he a combination? Like, who, and I do think the book is trying to explore these ideas. And I like that stuff. And when it does it successfully in the book, I really like it. I guess where I struggle sometimes is, like, it doesn't feel like it's like a through line of the story, in that, like, this is what the book is about, and, like, this is the thing. Like, I mean, we're about to get to the moment where Dan chokes out Abra. And I think that's in and of itself a very powerful moment, and I am so happy for the character of Dan and the character for Abra that is not a moment that goes worse. But also, I never for a minute in that moment believed he was actually going to go through with it. Like, I just didn't believe that was going to happen. And I think it's because the book has made it so every time Dan confronts moments of great rage, he successfully navigates away from them. Just like every time in the book he confronts moments of great temptation of alcohol, he successfully navigates away from them. And so it's like, I don't know what thing Dan needs to overcome in the climax of the story to, like, transcend in what you would call a typical character arc. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And, like, I think the book works in spite of that, but I just think it's like, this is one of those things where I'm like, what do we say? Like, what is this supposed to mean? I don't know. I'll let you talk.
Well, no, I just do simply agree. Like, it's structured as a story that is building toward a character catharsis and a moment of change. But there is no change because he's already this awesome hero.
Yeah.
Like, from pretty much after the moment of his low point, he's like, wow, that was an incredibly shitty thing to do that I'm deeply ashamed of. I'm going to turn my life around. And then he does that. And it's like, on the one hand, Dan is a fantastic character. I love him. He's heroic. Yeah. He's admirable. He's a very, like, deeply sort of wise, likable, like, he has all these positive qualities as a protagonist. Yeah. But in many ways, he's one of my favorite King protagonists, and yet, there's not a lot you can do dramatically with a character like that, because he's already so perfect. You give him this anger issue, you show him, push the guy over for being mean to an old man, and then you consistently have him just master his anger for the rest of the book, and then at the end he once again masters his anger, and you're just like, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. Like it's what you want to build. I don't know, I'm saying some obvious things here, but it's like, you want to build in a story like this toward a moment where you're uncertain about what choice your characters are going to make.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the issues is we're just not uncertain. We know exactly what all these characters are going to do.
Yeah. And even if you kind of know ultimately, like, I don't think this is going to be a book that ends with Dan choking Abra to death and killing her. Yeah, like there should be that dramatic moment of uncertainty that creeps into the back of your head in spite of yourself. And I just want to reiterate that, like, I think Dan works as a character in spite of all this stuff. But yeah, it just lead me to moments like this where I'm like, I read this sentence and I'm like, it feels like this was meant to be some great moment of revelation, and I just don't see it. And the irony of this is, like, you could make the argument is like, oh, well, Dan doesn't have an arc because this isn't Dan's story. This is Abra's story, actually. That's actually what it is. And I was like, I don't know if that works either, because Abra is not ultimately the one challenged in the climax of the story, right? Like, it is Dan's challenge. Like, it is Dan's rage that is manipulated and pushed by Rose to kill Abra. Abra is not manipulated or challenged in any way in the finale of the book at all. So like this build up in over the course of book of like, if we do or do not feel uneasy about Abra's behavior, like, it pays off. Like, I think there's a payoff to that in the epilogue that I think is beautiful and profound and I like, but it is not part of the climax actually at all. It's all about, the climax is all about Dan, and that's fine because I think this is a sequel to The Shining and Dan is the protagonist. But ultimately, then it's like, yeah, I don't know. They're like, I don't want to script doctor a book by one of the greatest authors of all time. But like, we talked last week about how maybe we could have had him go too far with Andy, actually, like where he had this great summon of anger all of a sudden, and then he walked back from it. Like, what would the situation be here if we know that he lost control of his anger in that moment and went too far, and then we move into this climax going like, oh, well, if he's tricked into believing Abra's in danger or Abra's dead, like, I don't know what this guy's gonna do, actually.
Yeah, I think that would have been great. I mean, really, just any sort of choice that he'd be asked to make, right? What you just said would have served. Some other sort of hallucination that would cause him to falter and make the wrong, or where we could believe that he could make the wrong choice. Because it's about choice. Like, I think that's one of the key principles of character and having characters in stories is like, okay, well, we want to put them in a situation where they have to make a choice. The choice is connected to a change. They make either the choice that we hope they make, or they make the opposite, and it's a tragedy. And I don't think that anybody really makes a choice here. Again, it's funny, genuinely silly almost, because I actually really enjoyed this climax. Like, I thought it was it was an enjoyable, fun, well executed climax where a lot of stuff came together. It's just there's this lingering frustration I think that we're both feeling, where it's like, where was that element? The way I phrase it to myself is like, where is that element of choice? Because it's just like, yeah, everybody did exactly what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, again, to preface our conversation about Flanagan's film that we're going to talk about in a couple weeks. This is another area where I think the film just absolutely nails this, that it puts a perfect choice directly in front of Dan and makes him choose. And it's profound and beautiful in all the ways. Like, it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite scenes of that film. So I think we are seeing, and again, I think maybe part of our reaction to this is just we saw another version of the story that I think just nails so many of these beats so successfully that it's like it makes you perhaps notice the parts that normally maybe we would have just nodded by and been like, yeah, no, this is fine, this is great, because this is a really good conclusion. Like, this is a really good climax, like, emotionally, and like the page turning nature of it. I was in on all of it. Like, I was in on the Dan screaming out at Rose, and then suddenly Billy's driving into the side of the thing, and all this stuff happening, and this kind of snowball of effects, like, was all really, really captivating and wonderful. But yeah, I think when you look back on it and try to say something profound about the past is gone, even though it defines the present, you're like, okay, great, true, 100% true. What does that actually mean for Dan in this moment right now?
Right.
Okay. Billy drives up to the parking lot, and in the passenger seat of the car is Abra. Okay, not really. It's the mannequin of the little girl. But but you might think it looks like Abra if you're like an overconfident 500-year-old witch vampire lady that didn't think to bring binoculars with her. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that you pointed out that she's high, because there's all these mistakes that she's making where it's just like, yeah, she has this like pathological grandiosity that only now is she starting to notice the little mistakes she's been making along the way. It's great.
Yeah. I also love this little line here. She says like, yes, maybe the true isn't out there with her, but when we're together, we're linked. We're a true knot. And that makes us a giant battery. Power I can draw on if I need to. Which, like, is sufficiently scary, but also in our like never-ending examination of the true knot, Matt, we have, like a giant battery. You mean so you're gonna drain your family.
Mm-hmm.
What would that do to them if you do that?
Yeah.
So they're pawns, they're chips.
Yep.
At this point for her.
Yep.
But as little Abra just sits there in the car, Rose's confidence starts to falter a bit. Good old Uncle Billy seems to be walking a bit too old to be an uncle, and Abra is still so still. And Rose realizes in her anger that she let Abra control all of this, and is realizing, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And she's just this kind of rolling realization of, and this, and it's like, we hate this woman so much. So it's really, really delightful when just watching bad guys in Stephen King stories get their comeuppance will always just continue to be delightful.
It's great. I just love how it's all set up, because you're watching this and you're feeling this thrill of like, haha, idiot. But then also, you know that she has this ace up her sleeve, which is Sari in the shed. So you can't really feel relaxed about any of this. I was honestly so sure that Sari was going to kill Billy. Because it's like, I don't know, it just seemed symmetric that those two are going to take each other out. Didn't happen that way, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, Dan flips open his two old lock boxes. In the room 217 box, Mrs. Massey is nothing but ash, as we talked about. But good old Horace DeWitt is still hanging around. I love the idea that when the box opens, he doesn't like try to spook Dan. He's actually like terrified of Dan Torrance now. He's like, I'm just going to leave you alone. I don't want anything to do with you and your just scary boxes. Leave me alone. Go away. And he just hightails it out of there. And we'll see him in a little bit.
Yeah. I love this.
So as Billy begins to do cartwheels to distract Rose, she finally figures everything out. Abra is not in the car. She's in the lodge with all of the true and someone else. Rose leaps into Dan's mind, but it's too late as he lets out his own steam, which is Momo steam, the red cancer-filled steam of death, true death. And man, this whole moment, like, despite all the complaints we just had, this moment, it works. Like, it's steam, Dan told them. You bastards lived on it. Now suck on it and die on it. Yeah. You love it.
I love it so much, and I always loved reminding myself that none of these people know who Dan is at all. Yeah. It's like, who's that guy? And then they die. That's it.
Yep.
That's just delightful to me.
That's so true. This is the moment we talked about a little bit earlier, where the book kind of stops to once again have this cathartic moment, because it says they began to cycle through the red mist. Dan saw two of them embracing with their foreheads pressed together, and in spite of all they had done, all they were, the sight moved him. He saw the words "I love you" on Short Eddie's lips. Saw Big Mo began to reply. Then they were gone. Their clothes floated on the floor. It was that quick. So yeah, like, just. We stop in this moment, this badass moment of righteous fuck these guys, to just once again, for the last time in the book, drill this idea of, but these people did also have genuine affection for each other. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. I happened to have watched like a video essay the other day that was making the point of like being able to feel bad for someone or feel sympathy with them. Has really nothing to do with the morality of that person or the situation, which is one of those things that's sort of obvious when you say it out loud like that. But I feel like it also trips people, and by people, I think I include myself, up constantly, where it's like, poor them. And then you're like, not really. I mean, they're awful. They deserve they deserve to die. But we're not particularly good at separating these things out from each other, and we feel like, oh well, the fact. But part of we never say it this way, but part of us, I think, feels like, oh, the fact that they're capable of love is like mitigating. It means maybe they shouldn't be punished. It's like, no, shut up. Yes, they should. They should be punished just as much, if not possibly worse. I don't know. It's just interesting how our intuitions kind of get us confused in this way.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I have a very sympathetic and empathetic bone in my body where I see people like suffering, even if it's deserved suffering, and I'm immediately like, oh, like I'll see like some piece of shit online is like getting absolutely raked over the coals, and like they're not a good person, but there's a part of me that like my hackles are raised and wants to defend them, because I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
stop it, that's mean, regardless of how they deserve it. I think that's just true. Yeah, like I don't think in this moment this is supposed to indicate like Dan feels guilt about what he's doing here. I think it's just this natural amount of human empathy of people that love each other are dying, and despite being awful.
Can we talk about the cartwheels for a second?
Sure.
I was so delighted when I forget the exact quote, but Billy says something like, "Yeah, I've got an idea. This is something I can try, but I'm not sure if I can do it anymore." And Dan's like, Dan, barely paying attention to him at all, said, "Okay, man," and like walked away. And I was like, "Oh, what's it going to be? What's it going to be that Billy has prepared? Are we going to find out that he has some shining trick that he's going to use on Rose? Is there going to be some ace in the hole, last minute thing that Billy pulled?" It's just cartwheels. This 80-year-old man does cartwheels to distract her for a second. That's it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I do too. It is really delightful. I mean, it's like it's so funny because this was his plan for making himself look younger, but of course it doesn't do that. It just makes her go, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Rose, enraged by the death of the rest of the crew, turns her attention towards Danny and almost immediately grabs what she needs out of his mind, something she could use to have him take care of Abra himself. It says here, rage was powerful, so were childhood memories. Rose shoves Dan back into his hubwheel room, and Abra follows, and our chapter ends with, "Hello, Danny. Hello, little boy." Oh, love it. You love it.
Yep. It's great.
All right, chapter 20, Hub of the Wheel, Roof O' the World. Our final chapter of the novel as Dan wakes up back in Deanie's apartment with a hangover. In bed next to him is Rose the Hat, who goads him for his failures and then tells him that Abra is dead. And this is how Dan reacts. The world went red. Dan clamped his hands around her throat and began to choke. One thought beat in his mind: worthless bitch, now you'll take your medicine. Worthless bitch, now you'll take your medicine. Worthless bitch, now you'll take it. Take it all. Of course, Matt, that's not Rose that Dan is choking, but poor little Abra. And Rose continues to pour it on, saying that she knows that Dan wanted to do this to Deanie even back then, saying that his father knew how to take care of disobedient women. But Rose doesn't know Dan very much, right? Because I think this is the moment that maybe it didn't work on us because we knew this the whole time. That Dan screams at Rose, "My father knew nothing," and knocks her back. And at the very same moment, good old Billy smashes his truck into the base of the lookout. I think one funny play off of that is Billy's a very funny character. And I think what Dan specifically told him was, if anything seems to start to go bad, get in your truck and drive like hell. And that's in essence exactly what he did.
Yeah.
I think Dan meant away instead of right into one of the beams of the platform.
That's funny. I don't think I put that together, but I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the wrong thing to say to Dan if your aim was to to make him a worse person, because
Yeah.
he's not his father, and he knows he's not his father.
Yep. And so the illusion is broken. And then after choking Abra to death, he screams at her, "I am not my father." I kind of like Abra's response, which is like, "Yeah, good. I'm glad."
Yeah.
Just like he's just choking this little girl to death, and then "I am not my father." Dan shouted at her, "I am not my father." She's like, "Uh-huh. Good job, Uncle Dan."
Yeah.
Just
All
pat
right.
on the head.
Yeah, you did it.
So Dan orders Abra to head back to New Hampshire, but she, of course, refuses, and the two of them leave Dan's mind room to confront Rose in the real world. Rose continues to attempt to manipulate them. A distraction, they reason, but they notice a locked shed that happens to be standing right behind them, and they open it with their minds and look inside it, but it's empty. It's empty.
Oh, thank goodness.
No. And so as Abra heads back to, I guess, keep her physical body from not dying, right? She just had to pop back into that thing for just a couple seconds to keep it from just not dying, I guess.
Yeah.
Rose gives the cue for Sari to walk out and kill Dan, but as it turns out, Matt, Sari's a little busy because good old Horace DeWitt shows up in the shed ready to bring Sari to his great party. This is such a Stephen King thing to do, right? This is like we build this disastrous, dangerous trap. We really set this. This is the one thing that Dan and Abra didn't know about. And I remember the first time reading this book, I felt exactly like you. I didn't know, like, this is the one moment, we talked about, did we know, we'd never believed that Dan was going to lose control of himself to his rage. I didn't know how this was going to play out. And I was really worried that someone was going to die. I think I don't remember if I thought it was Billy or Dan, but I really did think someone was just going to get it here. This plan was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is, well, the evil of the Overlook destroys evil once again. That they wanted to live here next to the source of great evil. And it is that evil that foils them ultimately. It's such a King thing to do. It really is.
Yeah. I love that. I love how this is executed. It's clever. It calls back to the start of the book where we establish, first of all, we just established the fact that he has locked up the ghosts in his mind. Also that the ghosts are corporeal and they can actually hurt you. And this one is feeding on all of the steam energy that the True Knot are emanating. So it's probably super strong right now.
Yeah.
And also like the description of the horse, Derwit, whatever it is, ghost is very like gothic and kind of horror toned in a way that The Shining was, but this book typically is not. So it just feels like a fun connection back to that tone. Just love everything about this moment.
Great party, isn't it? Yeah, it's perfect. It really is. All right, so Rose and Dan now face off mano a vampiro.
Yeah.
And it looks for a moment like Rose might be getting the upper hand. That she's controlling Dan's hand with his mind and gonna have him choke himself. When she's suddenly hit by a gust of air. A gust of air. It knocks her concentration just long enough to buy time for Abra to return, and the two of them combined manage to overpower Rose. And Matt, they just kind of like push her off the platform, and she falls down and breaks her neck. The end. I feel like a lot of people that are ultimately like critical of Stephen King endings a lot of the time are people that like really don't love like the anticlimax of some of it sometimes. Like this is this whole big confrontation, and it's basically they just like mind push her off of a platform and she breaks her neck, and that's it. Like it's just again, it's such a King thing to do. It really is.
Yeah. She's just ultimately she just has a physical body, and it's just as fragile as anyone else's, even though she's super strong in this moment. It's like, well, she fell off of a pretty high fall. So
I really love these last moments of Rose, though. She thought for just a moment of trying to bargain, a telling the girl they could work together, start a new knot, that instead of dying in 2070 or 2080, Abra Stone could live 1,000 years, 2,000. But what good would that do? Was there ever a teenage girl who felt anything less than immortal? So instead of bargaining or begging, she screamed defiance down at them. Fuck you both. The girl's terrible smile widened. Oh no, she said. You're the one who's fucked. Hell yeah, Abra.
Yeah. This is a dark little girl we got here. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, Rose is dead, and then they burn her hat, and it lights up like almost way too fast, because it's very old and magic.
It's full of evil magic. It's just an evil fucking hat, as Sam Jackson would say.
Yeah. Well, now it's a dead evil fucking hat. It's gone. Yeah. But Matt, who is that person up on the platform that helps Dan at the very last second?
It was Jack.
What? It was Jack, of course.
Yep.
This moment actually really moved me, like near tears. I love this moment of where it says, "But you didn't need to be Ebenezer Scrooge to know that there were good ghosty people as well as bad ones." As they walked down towards the Overlooker Lodge, Dan paused to look back at Roof of the World. He was not entirely surprised to see a man standing on the platform by the broken rail. He raised one hand, the summit of Pawnee Mountain visible through it, and sketched a flying kiss that Dan remembered from his childhood. He remembered it well. It had been their special end-of-day thing. "Bedtime, Doc. Sleep tight. Dream up a dragon and tell me about it in the morning." Dan knew he was going to cry, but not now. This wasn't the time. He lifted his own hand to his mouth and returned to the kiss. Just, like, damn, Steven. Like, just moves you. Like, it's so sad.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's one thing. Like, look, you talked a lot about The Shining. And that is, I think, one thing that is incredibly tragic about The Shining is that King takes time to make Jack Torrance actually, like, until alcoholism notwithstanding, but like, he's a good dad and he loves his son, right? Like Jack and Danny have this special bond, this incredible closeness, this powerful relationship. And the book, in the slow burn to everything that happens in that novel, it really spends time to establish this, and that is part of the horrible tragedy of that story, is that this special relationship is ultimately destroyed. And then we return to it here in this moment that Dan gets, one final moment with his daddy, and I don't know, it just hit me. It really hit me.
Me too. Again, very well. A lot of great emotional beats, one after the other. And this hit me too. Yeah, I mean, I think I felt exactly the same as you, where we talked earlier about the nostalgia, and it's like I think that there's a chance that you try to have the ghost of Jack Torrance show up and it comes off as corny. I didn't feel anything corny about this. I thought this was a very well earned and solidly landing moment, personally.
Yeah, I agree. It's wonderful. It's great. You kind of felt like we were going to get to this point at some point in the story. And when we got there, it works perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we are now in the epilogue titled Until You Sleep. We do have a quote in the epilogue that is a reversal of the quote in the first section, which is fear originally stood for fuck everything and run. Now fear stands for face everything and recover. And in our first sub chapter of the epilogue titled Anniversary, Dan is at an AA meeting ready to accept his 15-year chip. We also learn, we already said this, but we also learned that people are just calling him Doc again. And he says that's life is a wheel. And you apparently hate this expression.
Hate it. Always have.
I lost a little respect for you when you said that.
Always hated it. No, just kidding. I just think it's being used here in a way that doesn't quite make sense to me, whereas usually it's applied in a way that makes more sense. So whatever, it's fine.
So Dan stands up and gives his speech. And this is a moment that I actually had forgotten. We talked about it last week, where I legitimately didn't remember, is his moment of needing to confess, his low moment, ever going to fully land in the book. And here it is. his rock bottom, what he did to Deanie and her little boy. And the reaction of the crowd is nothing. Like kind of boredom.
Yeah.
They just don't really care, or not in the way he thought that they were going to care. I think this moment works so well. It works really, really, really well.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to. There's two different angles to take on this. The first one is just, this is brilliant and great and emotionally lands near perfectly for me.
Yeah.
Do you concur?
I agree with that statement.
And so the other is the choice to do it in the epilogue, right? The choice to do this as the final beat of Dan's journey, not a necessary necessary step in Dan's journey. There's like part of me that says, as we already talked about, maybe that robs us of something in his arc, but there's part of me that like the simplicity of, oh, I was making mountains out of molehills the entire time, and it's like no one's going to judge me for these mistakes I made, actually. And it was not that it was nothing, but it was just like I've surrounded myself with people that aren't going to care about that kind of thing.
Right.
It works so well as like an epilogue moment.
Yeah. So let's do this, Scott. The anticlimax is the point where
okay.
The observation that we made in this discussion that Dan Torrance is he's already completed his arc.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact about Dan Torrance is he doesn't know that, because he doesn't think he's a fictional character, which is understandable. But also, we never know. We always think like, I have this burden, and I'm struggling with this burden, and it's just this horrible burden that I carry, and no one can empathize with these burdens that I carry, and sometimes in life, like the moment of setting down the burden, I'll say at no point in my life has like a moment of catharsis ever really been accompanied by a dramatic plot climax.
Of course, yeah. That's not how any of this works.
But
yeah.
but there are such things as moments in life when you just decide to change, or decide to put down the burden. And I think that's kind of what I'm just agreeing with you, really, that like just saying like, and then after Dan went through all of that and proved himself to be a hero, willing to risk his life for that of a child, then he faced what he was really frightened of. What really, really frightened him was telling a room full of people about this horrible thing he did. And then he realized they didn't care. And it was totally anticlimactic. And it's like, oh, actually, the things in your life that sort of matter to you internally are just not lined up with the things in life that actually matter. Because the thing that actually mattered is him killing the True Knot and saving Abra, right? I kind of love that as a statement about the way how life works, actually.
Yeah, no, I love this line of thinking, this idea that Dan's arc in the story is not a traditional character arc, because, as you said, Dan has already completed that arc at the beginning of the story, but he doesn't know it yet. So the idea that Dan's journey in the story is not one of actual change, but one of recognizing in yourself and allowing yourself to believe that you have actually changed.
I love
that maybe that is the step of recovery. Is the first step of recovery is doing the thing, is accomplishing the thing, is stop drinking.
Yeah.
Stop it. And you get there and you've done that, but the thing you're carrying with you is not necessarily, am I going to drink today? I mean, that is part of it, sure, but the other part of it is like, have I really become the person who doesn't drink anymore?
Uh-huh.
Am I really this person? Am I really a person capable of that? And that is Dan's journey, essentially, of recognizing what we have been saying is true of him this entire book, which is he's always going to make the right call there. Always. Uh-huh. He is a kind, decent, wonderful person. And everything he does in this book is good and compassionate. And like, with the exception of the one moment we see at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not about him making change. It's about him realizing that the change already happened. I
Yeah,
like that a
and
lot.
accepting that part of himself. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it. I love
I
it. Well
quite love
said.
that actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
All right, so we cut from Dan's 15-year celebration to Abra's 15-year celebration because he is turning 15 years sober and she is turning 15 years alive. And we learn here, Matt, that Abra is struggling. And this doesn't surprise us, maybe because we knew that Dan's shining stuff got the worse when he was a teenager, and that's where Abra is now. And she has broken all the plates in her mom's uh, china cabinet. She's angry all the time. She's frustrated by people, and she knows she has this power that, and it also frustrates her that she could use it, but shouldn't. And also she's frustrated by her guilt of maybe not even killing the True Knot, but the fact that she enjoyed it so much. Um, and the Stones basically asked Dan to go talk to her, and I love how Dan approaches this. By the way, this is, I think, this is the moment that I think you can get the closest to arguing that the Abra is blood related to Jack Torrance matters, because the way Dan approaches this conversation is to essentially say, like, look, here's how this stuff works. My grandpa, violent, abusive asshole. My father, violent, abusive asshole. Me, violent, abusive. But I found a way to get through it. This is your past. This is your. I think the quote he says is, "There's nothing to get. There's no point. There's nothing but family history." In the words of the immortal Elvis Presley, "It's your baby. You rock it." So I like this general idea of, like, look, this is stuff that's just inside of you, and you're gonna have to figure it out. Now I will say, I still don't think this retroactively, like, makes the Abra has to be blood related thing like a necessity for, and it makes that choice worth it. I don't think so. But what do you think?
I don't think it's necessary, right? Because we can just say, if you have the Shining, then that makes you a certain type of person who's going to be sensitive to all of the evils of the world, and that's the thing that makes you similar to Dan, and they can connect over this thing. It doesn't have to be, oh, you have a genetic predisposition toward anger. Like, I'm frankly not even convinced there's such a thing as a genetic predisposition toward anger. Like, I don't know if that's a thing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, this is another thing that, like, if this was a book actually talking about the ideas of nature versus nurture and, like, what defines you as a person, like, the reason why Jack Torrance was an abusive asshole is because he grew up in a household in which his father was an abusive asshole, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that was like a genetic disposition for Jack to be like that. I think in his most important, like, personality defining years, that was the one person in his life that he observed, and it affected him in ways that he didn't really even fully understand until much later in life. And, like, same thing with Dan Torrance, right? Like, he went through this horribly traumatic experience where his father, the person he loved more than anything in the world, like, did this terrible thing to him, and that affects a person. Abra doesn't have any of that, right? These are people that she's never met, she's never experienced. Her home life is relatively common and good. Obviously, like, we get little hints that Lucy might have a little bit of the old Torrance rage stuff, but, like, not in a way that is, like, comparable to anything that Dan went through. So, like, I don't know. Like, I agree with you. Like, I don't think the book, like, really deals with this enough to make, like, this, like, yeah, you just got some violence in you, so just be aware of that, I guess. And I don't think that, like, I don't think she can have anger issues without being a Torrance, right? Like,
yeah,
Rose has anger issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can have anger issues, and it can just be like, well, you have a lot of power, and you don't necessarily have quote unquote anger issues, but you have the ability to kill someone with your mind.
Right. Yeah.
And so you have to be more careful than the average person. Like, that's that's what I actually kind of thought we were doing with this character. Is like, no, it's not literally that you have rage issues. Because honestly, she doesn't have rage issues. She doesn't like go into a blind rage and punch holes in drywall. She was being hunted by murderers, and she got and then she killed them, and then she broke some plates. You know, I don't know. I agree with you. I'm just like, this feels like a thread in the tapestry of the book that is just kind of over here, and maybe there's some missed stitches.
Yeah, I mean, I do genuinely think King wants to have this discussion about alcoholism as a disease and the way that disease might be passed on to our children, and like wrestling with that idea, because I'm sure that's something that King has wrestled with himself and his children. And like, I'm sure it's conversations he had to have with his children where he's like, you know, I have this predisposition to get very, very addicted to this stuff. Is this just a genetically inherited trait? Could be, possibly. Do we want to risk it? Should like, you know, like, I'm sure that's a conversation he has had multiple times, and it's a thing you worry about as a parent. It's like, I mean, that is a thing you worry about a lot as a parent, is like the parts of myself that I am least happy with and least proud of, my biggest faults, my biggest problems, are these things that I'm going to pass on to my kid, either genetically, or just they're going to pick up from me in the course of, you know, being around me for the most important years of their lives. It's things I think about all the time, especially if I see like I see moments in my son of like, that's how I would have reacted to that, or that's how I like, and I'm like, damn it, I don't want him to be that way. I don't want him to be like that. I don't want like, and like, these are things I think about all the time. So like, there is a version of the story that is about that, that is about these ideas and about this thing that Dan, you know, they made the book. Stephen King chose to make Dan an alcoholic, so that is definitely at the core of what the book is doing. But yeah, I like it a lot in a lot of places.
I find myself wondering, like, if some earlier version of this book maybe wasn't like, Dan Torrance grows up and he has a daughter named Abra, and his mother Wendy is still alive and is Abra's grandmother. And the stuff that we see Conchetta doing in this book is stuff that Wendy did. And then it becomes, it's a smaller story. It's in some ways a tighter story, but maybe it just didn't have certain elements that King wanted to explore. Yeah. Or maybe he wanted to spend more time on just like Dan being a loner alcoholic, dealing with his alcoholism, and he wanted that to be, you know, kind of like half of the book almost. And that just didn't work with him also being a father to a 13-year-old. And I don't have a lot of confidence in this. I literally just thought of this as an idea, but the family. I think the reason I say it is like the family stuff feels vestigial. It feels like part of something from some other story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I just not for nothing. I just wanted to say that, like, speaking of, Abra seems to actually be doing pretty good. Like, if you are, in my mind, if you are like actively worrying about the fact that, hey, maybe I enjoyed that violence a little too much, like, I'm feeling pretty good about you, right? It's like the old saying that like if you're worrying about being if you're a bad parent or not, that's probably a pretty good sign that you're at least trying to be a good parent. Like, does it that in and of itself doesn't make you a good parent? And just like worrying about if I was a little evil back there doesn't make you in and of itself not evil. But I think it's a hell of a lot better than a person that is not at all looking back on that moment and saying, "Ooh, did I enjoy that a bit too much?"
Right, I agree.
So yeah, I feel pretty good about you, Abra. I think you're gonna be okay.
Yep, she's gonna be fine.
Yeah. And now she's got an outlet for her anger, which is to go to the dump and hit things.
Yeah. That'll be awesome. Can't wait for the superhero adventures of Abra.
I really, as we leave Abra behind here, like really did enjoy her as a character. I think this is a very fun character. Just all the Torrance stuff notwithstanding, that's not her fault. She didn't do that to herself. That's Steven's fault. But I really liked her as a character. I really felt for her. I think she's in many ways like the emotional core of the story, and I like her a lot.
Me too.
So their conversation wraps up with Dan getting a call that he's needed back at the hospice. It's not, though, Matt, an old man or woman dying, but it's Fred Carling, the asshole orderly that Dan almost beat the shit out of at the very beginning of the novel. Turns out he was in a horrible car accident and is dying. An ambulance can't get there yet because there was a massive pile up outside of Castle Rock, which is just the type of thing that happens in Castle Rock. But Dan is there for him. And our novel closes on Dan doing his thing with someone he doesn't even particularly like, which again I think really nails our point to what we talked about, which is this like this guy's actually like awesome. This is a great person.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, here's the final lines of the book. Can you help me, please, Doc? Can you help me? Yes, he could help. It was his sacrament, what he was made for. It was quiet now in Rivington House, very quiet indeed. Somewhere close, a door was swinging open. They had come to the border. Fred Carling looked up at him, asking what? Asking how? But it was so simple. You only need to sleep. Don't leave me. No, Dan said, I'm here. I'll stay here until you sleep. Now he clasped Carling's hand in both of his and smiled. Until you sleep, he said. I don't have anything to say about this. I think it's just a very, very good way to end a book.
Yeah. I love it. I love this.
Yeah.
I love so much about this book. This beautiful, so many beautiful moments as we close this book, both in the climax and after the climax. And here at the end, as we have wrapped everything up, I think, God, we said it a bunch of times here, but I just think Dan Torrance is such a lovable, good man.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what a great character.
I guess like if you had told me, had I not read this book and you had told me that like Stephen King wrote a sequel to The Shining and he made Dan Torrance an alcoholic, I would be like, that guy's going to be Jack Torrance all over again. And it is fascinating to, I kind of love the book a lot more now, having just unlocked what you and I talked about just a few minutes ago, that this idea that like, no, the point the entire time was that he is not even close to who his father was.
Yeah. And he's realizing that.
Yeah. I love it so much. A really good book. Like I think we spent more time on this book criticizing and critiquing and having issues with it than we have on a lot of King books in the past. But I think that's okay. I mean, I think it was all done with love and a desire to have the best reading experience possible. But in the end, as we said, it's really, really moving stuff for me.
I think in a couple places it's only because we sort of gave vent to our frustrations or our feelings of disconnection that we were able to find ways that it in the end did work for us. So I like you said, I don't have any illusions that Stephen King is going to take notes from me and then go like change the book. So it really is just about us like trying to find our way through how we feel about these things and kind of just report our experience, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we did. And I think that's what we will do again next week as we move into our overview episode. So I think we've talked about the book as a whole more in these episodes than we typically do, but I do think there's a good opportunity for us to take a week, reflect on the book as a whole, and come back and talk about it one last time before we move on to Flanagan's film. So we're going to do that on our overview episode next week.
All right.
But before we wrap things up for the week, we do have our discussion question from 2 weeks ago. Didn't get a lot of answers to this one. Maybe it was because the world disagreed with our measles takes.
Yeah.
But
or maybe it's because they were like, what the hell does this mean? Because the question...
I do think the majority of the questions, even when they answered, said... here's my answer as I understand the question.
Yeah, basically.
Sometimes we think we have really good ideas and then we push them out into the world and turns out not so much.
Makes perfect sense to me. The question was, what is your favorite measles moment? By which we mean like a story moment or element that kind of merges the supernatural and the mundane in a creative and fresh way. That's not how we phrased it before, but that's how I would phrase it now. Anyway, the Charbear 14 says, I'm not sure if this would count as measles moment, but K-pop Demon Hunters is a really good example of a magical concept I've never seen before. It's about a group of demon hunters who use music to defeat demons and use the fact that they are a K-pop group as cover. Also, the fact that the main villain they're fighting against is a demon boy band is so perfect that I shouted, "This is amazing!" to no one in my living room.
Yeah,
Yes.
Those who listen to our other podcast know that both Matt and I are K-pop Demon Hunter converts.
That's right. We're stands.
We've both watched the film and quite enjoy it. And my son is currently obsessed with that movie. Although he's never seen the movie, he just watches the music videos for the songs on YouTube constantly. Just constantly. He loves them. I've heard Golden so many times.
Yeah, my kids love those songs too, and they love K-pop in general. So there's a lot of that in my house. My
niece is also learning Korean, by the way. I learned this. She's also in love with this movie. So
the K-pop phenomenon is in. So I thought this was, my oldest daughter being just, finding a thing that she was into. No, this is the thing. This is the thing of the moment is K-pop and K-pop Demon Hunters.
It already kind of like K-pop was already kind of the thing of the moment. And then like this, I think this movie has turned it up to like another level.
Yeah.
This is the film of the summer. Like this is an incredibly popular movie. Like all the songs are on the charts. It's kind of insane how, and poor Sony made this deal with Netflix, didn't put it in very many theaters, and they're not seeing a freaking dime from all this. I mean, that's not entirely true, but not as much as they should.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh well.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Hobo Demon says, I'm going with a part of The Color of Magic where Mork Porthoth gets burned down for insurance money from a tourist from the part of the planet where the gold is still used for currency, but at a more highly inflated value than elsewhere because of oversupply. Like magic exists, but they don't use it for firefighting because they'd be competing with a different unionized portion of the working class. That's a measles moment. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think there's a lot of that in the, is that Terry Pratchett?
I'm guessing it. It sounds very Terry Pratchett. Yeah, I've not read that particular one, but
I feel like his sensibility about things would lend itself to a lot of measles moments.
Yes, that is Terry Pratchett. You're absolutely right. It's like Terry Pratchett is like measles moment, the book series.
Yep.
Like that's just that's kind of what he does. So yeah,
exactly. Per Jane says, ultimate measles moment, Jeff Goldblum uploading a computer virus to an alien mothership that's apparently running iOS. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, it is the perfect like 1990s people don't understand how computers and viruses work. They're just like, yeah, no, you just how'd you get the virus into the alien ship? I uploaded it.
Yeah.
I just uploaded it.
Right. It's like within the logic of the movie, within the universe of the movie that has been created. Sure. Yeah. He I mean, in all honesty, like the whole beginning of the movie is him like cracking their code via the signal they're sending around the Earth. Yeah. So the idea that he's going to be able to reverse engineer their ship's operating system or whatever, it's like, sure, fine. I believe he can do that within the frame of this movie.
Yeah. No complaints.
And Will Smith can definitely fly the ship and it's all good.
He just had to turn the little Post-it note around and he's good.
Yeah. Somebody got this all. Yeah.
All right. Next we have Philadow, who says the second Apocalypse fantasy series by R. Scott Baker had a few measles moments for me. One is that, like in a lot of fantasy series, sorcerers work magic by speaking arcane words of power. But Baker adds a twist. In addition to the spoken sentence, sorcerers must also simultaneously recite a different sentence silently in their heads. In the semantics and grammar of the sorcerer's languages, these two sentences, the utteral and the inutteral, clarify and play off each other to activate the magical effects. I guess I like this concept and consider it a measles moment in that it more solidly conceptualizes why magic is difficult and requires years of study, and partially explains why some sorcerers are more powerful than others, rather than having it just be a vague thing that nobody can really quantify. This requirement to literally doublespeak and double think, which is something we can intuitively understand and try ourselves, adds a technical layer to the magic that grounds it in a way that makes it less hand-wavy than a lot of other fantasies. Yeah, I've not read the series, but that sounds pretty neat, actually. I like that.
I like that. I like magic systems where like the reason why the magic is difficult is something other than just you don't have enough power level to do it. Like it's something you can kind of grasp. But one of my favorites was a magic system where no one could write down spells or like basically write down anything about magic. There was just a magical interdict that meant you couldn't write anything down, but you could write down like sufficiently abstract hints or riddles that kind of pointed in the direction of the, so the act of becoming a great wizard is basically collecting all of the scraps of these riddles and hints and then like pondering them until you figured it out on your own, since no one could actually just transmit them directly. So I was like, yeah, you just have to figure out the puzzles and riddles.
Yeah, that's great. I think my favorite magic systems are ones in which if the magic system existed in the real world, I might still not do it because it sounds really hard and boring.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what science is, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, true.
It's true. The magic system of our world, and it takes a lot of effort to learn. And
we all believe that we would immediately become a magician if magic existed in our world.
Yeah. And
sounds like a lot of work.
And yet we have that opportunity and we mostly don't. So, all right, last one from eman 9001. I feel like I keep going to the Sandman, but it's such a damn good series. I can't help it. The Sandman, Morpheus, Lord of Dreams, is taken prisoner by a cult that was actually trying to capture his sister Death. Trapped inside an arcane circle of sand, Morpheus was cut off from the rest of the world, and the world of dreams was left in disarray. Morpheus is held captive for about 70 years and was captured in 1917. This is important because it correlates with the real-world outbreak of encephalitis lethargica, colloquially known as sleepy sickness, not to be confused with sleeping sickness. For about 11 years, there was a pandemic of sleepy sickness, starting in Europe and then spreading worldwide. Patients would experience extreme lethargy, sleep inversion, and a host of psychological problems. Severe cases ended with the patient becoming catatonic or even falling into a coma. Almost no one who caught sleepy sickness returns to baseline afterwards, and over 1.6 million people worldwide died of encephalitis lethargica. Full disclosure, I'm a bit of a sleep nerd, and I found tying together the question of what happens when you cut the Lord of Dreams off from the world and this incredibly odd disease that we 100% don't talk about enough is fascinating. The story uses Morpheus being imprisoned as an explanation for this strange disease, and even uses characters who suffered from sleepy sickness as a plot point in later volumes. I read up a bit about this after this comment, E-Man, because I'd never heard of this somehow. It's terrifying. And the most terrifying thing about it is they don't actually know what caused it. I think maybe the leading theory is like side effects of the Spanish flu. Or in other words, like you've had a Spanish flu infection and now you're having essentially long-term encephalitis consequences, but like they're not sure that that's it. So it's always really frightening when you hear about some old-timey disease that went away and they don't know what caused it, and it's like, oh, so that's probably just out there somewhere. It's probably some animal that's still carrying it somewhere.
In the steam. It's terrifying.
It's in the steam. It's in the steam.
Yeah. Yep. That's fucking, thank you for terrifying me, man. I didn't know about this, and now I'm just gonna have nightmares, which would perhaps give me sleepy sickness.
Yeah, you'll be lucky to have nightmares, Scott.
Yeah.
All right, the last answers were OK Row 2424 said the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, mixing D&D gameplay with Earth culture and AI pop culture references.
We're gonna have to read those eventually. I keep hearing things. There's like 10 of them now or something.
I've not heard anything about these. Interesting.
Really? Yeah. It's supposed to be very popular. I don't know if that means good, but
cool. And then Steve Living Room said Garden State's broken dishwasher latch causing life-changing accident through mundane household failure. Yeah, I mean, that's, I like how the question was interpreted in Bread Theory, because there's nothing supernatural about that, but it is something very mundane and just meaningless, having horrifying, life altering consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks for those answers, everyone. Sorry for the confusing question. We thought we had a banger there. I guess not. But we do have a question for a couple episodes from now. So this question will be read on the episode that we finally do cover Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, which I'm anxiously awaiting. I cannot wait to talk about that movie with you, Matt. And so we thought we'd ask a question semi-related to that. So what is our question, Matt?
Question was, is The Shining a good adaptation?
Oh, we're going to finally solve it once and for all.
Yep. Let us know.
Because I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question.
I have no opinion at all. Never thought about it.
Okay. All right, folks. That is it for this week. As we said, next week we will wrap up our coverage of Stephen King's Dr. Sleep with one final episode looking over the novel as a whole and finally getting to the bottom of how we feel about it. It's been a back and forth, so we're going to conclude on it finally next week.
That's right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, on Twitter at flanaganswakepod, over on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, and all kinds of other places. You can, I think you can usually find all those links if you simply go to doofmedia.com and you'll find all the links there. And of course, our YouTube channel, where you can watch all these episodes and comment. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, please do. Please leave comments and send the feedback we get. As much as I kind of poked fun at the fact that we got so many comments about people want to talk about measles spreading, we did appreciate that. We appreciate the engagement for sure. So please keep that up. And if you want to help in other ways, you can buy some merchandise. Head on over to doofmedia.myshopify.com and check out all of our available merch. We've got merch for The Haunting of Hill House, for Flanagan's Wake, for Kingslingers, and just for Doof Media in general. So check it out at doofmedia.myshopify.com and get some cool stuff.
Yeah, if you like Flanagan's Wake and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. We're, as always, working on some bonus content for you. And there's a huge backlog of bonus content if you haven't signed up yet.
Yep. And of course, if you cannot afford to donate on Patreon, that is absolutely okay. There's still tons of ways to help us out. You can share the podcast. Please keep sharing it. And please leave ratings and reviews on whatever service you happen to use. This week's Spotlight review comes from Planet of the Mapes, who gives us 5 stars and says, "Found my people. I watched Hill House and quickly went through all of Flanagan's works. After my third watch of The Fall of the House of Usher, I still hadn't had enough and wondered if there was a podcast discussing his works. I found you guys and I have not been disappointed. I love the fact that you go for the books first, as I am an avid reader. Loving the show. Thanks for all you do. Can't wait to make my way through Kingslingers." Well, thanks, Planet of the Mapes. You have quite a few hours of Kingslingers to work through as well. So hopefully you won't get bored of us. But we do appreciate those kind words. I'm glad you're liking the book coverage. I am always a little bit worried when we shift on this show from our coverage of Mike Flanagan stuff to the book stuff, because I think we've attracted a certain amount of audience that likes us talking about Flanagan's work specifically, and isn't used to us talking about books in this way. But I think every time we've done it, we found it was really, really beneficial to the conversations we have about the eventual films or TV shows. So we're going to keep doing it for sure.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, folks. That is it. One more episode before we move on to the film, and that will be next week. We'll see you then. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan, and poor Rose, and your old magic hat.
Poor Sari.
Poor hat.
Poor Big Mo. Curly.
Little Eddie.
Little Eddie.
What happened to Poophead Pete? Crap
Garbage
pants
Man
Carl?
Gary.
Garbage Man Gary. Piss my pants Steve.